Hi, you guys. Welcome to the Odin School of Mysteries. My name is Bear. Thanks for coming. Um, so a couple house cleaning things. Um, a week from, well, I guess it's not a week from. Wednesday, I'm taking the boy camping, and I will be gone for about a week, so there won't be anything posted. At least, I don't think so. Maybe mountains are funny, so maybe there will be reception up there. I could post from my phone or whatever, but probably not. I think that's it. I feel like there's one more thing. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember. Anyway, so I thought that it would be fun to get into some astrotheology today. Most people have never heard of astrotheology before, and that's fine. Like everything that we cover, I would say, in this channel, there's a lot to it. I feel like with this channel, basically, I'm walking everyone through a vast library and just pointing at books and saying, look, that book exists, and then we have to wander off. Unfortunately, all these subjects are just so vast, and there's a reason why, this stuff takes lifetimes of study. And full-time dedication to it, to really sink your teeth into it. And so with that in mind, like I say a lot, don't feel bad. This is a big subject. If you're not stupid, if you don't get it, it's just complicated, right? There's just a lot to it, a lot of moving parts. I'm going to do my best to keep this very simple. This is an introduction. And so just sit back, relax, and we'll talk about stuff. So astrotheology basically is the study of planetary bodies as gods. Most gods, ancient gods, have a planet associated with them. And the way the planet moves across the sky and the different things that it encounters along the way will echoes the story of the god. A lot of astrotheology has to do with the sun. Most of it has to do with our sun. But all of our planets are named after ancient deities. Mercury, for example, Venus, Gaia, which is Earth, and to the Gnostics, it was Zoe. And then you have Mars, of course. Everyone's familiar with Mars, or Ares, or Thor, the god with the big red beard that likes to make war on things. You have Jupiter as kingship, and or Poseidon, if you want to go Greek, and then Saturn, or Kronos, if you want to go Roman and Greek. So astrotheology is decoding the symbols of the planets and using it to kind of teach us a more profound story than what we are traditionally used to seeing. So we're going to focus most of our attention today on the sun, because it's an easy, what's the word? I think it's just easiest to kind of get started that way. Just because we're all familiar with the way the sun works, you don't require a rocket scientist to know how a day works or a year. We've all lived it, and so we're all pretty well familiar with it. And so one of the reasons I waited so long to cover this subject is that a lot of the principles and stuff involved, a lot of that old stuff needed to be covered first. We're talking about the principles of gender and polarity. We're talking about the elements, and there's just a lot of things that kind of go into it. All right. So let's begin. The sun is always symbolic of light. Big surprise there, right? It is always really symbolic of light. I found a whiteboard. I'm excited. Okay. Let's just scoot on over here. Maybe just move my chair a little bit. There we go. All right. The sun is always symbolic of light, right? So, back in the earliest times, back when mankind was just in its infancy, darkness was a real problem. All the light goes away. And if you can't see, it's dangerous. Maybe you'll run into a branch. Maybe you'll fall into a hole. There's predators that live out there in the darkness who could see even though you can't. And so darkness was, from the very beginning, was the symbol for not knowing. Dwelling in darkness, having your light under a bushel, is the symbol for not being able to understand. You don't know what's there. We do our best with our limited senses in the dark. But until the light of Gnosis, until the sun comes up in the morning, we don't know what was actually there. We have a lot of guesses. Right? We all remember when we're kids and we're afraid of the dark because we don't know. We hear a weird sound, and is it maybe coming from under our bed, or is it in the closet, or we don't know because we can't see. And I used the axiom before: I know, therefore I see, and I see, therefore I live. That's I'm not sure if anyone else uses that, but that is definitely one of the main axioms for the Odinic school of mysteries. I know, therefore I see, and I see, therefore I live. For those of you who like to read, I'll write it here. I know, therefore I see, I see, therefore I live. You see that? I know, therefore I see, and I see, therefore I live. So the sun became the symbol of knowing. So because the sun, it rises in the morning, it illuminates the world. We know what's going on. And not only does it just illuminate things, but it brings new life, new growth into the land. The ancients might have been primitive, at least as the way we tend, at least the way modern history would tend to believe. I'm not sure that I would agree with that. But even by modern historical standards, they would tell you that the ancients were at least smart enough to figure out that the sun was what was responsible for crops growing, for bringing in the harvests. And so the sun became the symbol for God, the force that brings life and light into the world. And even with sun worshippers, were people who say that they worship the sun. It's interesting because if you talk to them, they don't actually worship the sun. They see the sun as the symbol for that divine force that changes everything. Remember, fire is the transformational principle. It's the thing that takes something from its base element and changes it into something brand new. If I light a piece of paper on fire, it changes the paper into carbon, and then everything that isn't carbon, it gets turned into heat, because carbon has a much higher burning point than than the rest of it does. So the sun was the thing that set you free. That's what it became. It became that symbol. And so as we progress through time and we have these various sun gods, they always represent that similar thing. They represented the force of nature that sets you free. All the way from Horus, all the way up to Jesus and beyond. So we'll start off with this here. All right. So we're going to draw a little circle. And then we're going to put a nice line through the circle. All right. So, wish I had a... Let me sit this on. And maybe if I put this book underneath it. Maybe if I got clever, I could figure this out. Hi, guys. Don't look at my mess. Oh, no, you can see my mess. Don't look. Okay. Ha! Can't see it anymore. Now it's gone. I'm a nutty guy. Anyway. So this is the east. Over here is the west. And the sun, it rises in the east. Moves across the sky. Reaches the height of its power at noonish. And then it starts losing its battle with darkness. And finally, it sets in the west. Okay. It's the reason why the Egyptians called passing away, or the act of death, westing. Westing. It's the place in the west. Horus was represented in ancient Egyptian mythology as the sun rising in the morning. It's where you get the... there's kind of a debate on whether or not the term son of the morning represents Venus, or whether it is this thing here. Symbols could represent two different things. I think, depending on the context, it could either be Venus or the morning sun. So, in the morning, this is Horus. Over here, this is where we get the word horizon from. Horus, horizon, the zone of Horus. And over here is the sunset. Think of the god Set. So where we get this word from, sunset. And this up here was called, I think it's called the autumn. Someone out there's going to have to correct me on that, because I think I'm getting my gods wrong. But you have Horus down here, the god at the height of its power, and then he loses his battle with Set and eventually dies, then falls into the underworld. This goes down here like this. Okay, everyone following so far? So this is the light, life. Down here is the underworld. Down here. All right. So, remember what we talked about how the directions matter, like positive, negative polarities. They're not. I don't super like the analogy, just because people, when they hear the word negative, they always think of something bad. Like you're a very negative person. They think of something like that. That's not what we're talking about here. Negative, for those who don't know, is energy received into itself. And positive is energy pushed out, because it creates a circuit. Think of it like an electrical circuit. So, the thing to remember is, why is the sun god always a man? A lot of people ask me that. Why is it always a guy? It goes back to the old esoteric way of describing polarity. Energy out is masculine. So, men go to war, men go into the field, men go hunting. The masculine energy is represented as energy pushed out. I'm trying to do this, trying to explain this. Maybe that makes sense. Okay. So the autumn is masculine. Why is the autumn masculine? The autumn is masculine because what does the sun do? The sun gives, right? It's energy out. The sun gives the earth, the sacred feminine, who receives the energy. The sun gives energy. It gives light. It gives gnosis. The mother earth, Gaia, or Nana, if you're talking about the Norse, receives energy from the sun. There's a lot of reasons why the earth is considered feminine, but one of the main ones is this principle we're talking about here. It receives stuff from other places. It makes it so, therefore it makes it feminine. It's a feminine principle. And then there's all the water and all that stuff that's also here on Earth. If we're talking about Norse, the sun here would be Balder. It's also Tammuz. It's Jesus. It's Horus, or the Aten. There's a lot of sun gods out there. There's a ton of them. And so down here, the moon and stars are always considered feminine. The night is called the sacred feminine, the lesser light. And why is this feminine? Well, for two reasons. One, it receives the sun, right? Feminine always receives. Think of sex. Again, what does the masculine pushes energy out through the semen? The feminine receives energy into herself. So the sun is received into the dark womb of the mother goddess. And then the mother goddess gives birth. She gives birth. Birthing is energy out. And energy out makes this masculine. Understand? It makes this a masculine principle. Energy out. So, clear as mud so far? Excellent. So we'll start getting into more of this here in a second. But you could see right away how the ancients saw these things. Gods and goddesses weren't just externalized deities that we were meant to just worship. Right. They're not... they're more than just a thing. They represented forces of nature, grand stories that are told every day. So, for again, like down here, the mother goddess down here at the bottom, the sun who nourishes the earth, who brings light into the world, and how both of these things combined represent gnosis, life, and light, and without them, the world dies. So what we're going to do is we're going to just erase all of this. It would be prudent to kind of keep all of this in mind, because even though we're not talking about it specifically, we're also talking about the Great Clock. We're talking about procession and all of that stuff. Even though we're not like talking about it, it's all the same information. Okay. So, same principle, but going counterclockwise. Or not counterclockwise, clockwise. So when we're talking about days, right, we kind of go in this direction. Right, the sun rises in the east, goes up overhead, then falls down below. When we're talking about the year, however, the sun goes the opposite direction. This over here is the spring equinox. And here's the fall equinox. See that? Up here is summer solstice. And down here is winter solstice. Okay. So the year is split into two. For those of you who don't know, that's where we get the symbol from in Christianity. Same thing. It's the sun going around the cross of the zodiac. And we are talking about the zodiac here. We're just not talking about it. Like, there's a lot. I had to decide how much of this to talk about at once. But we are indeed talking about the zodiac. We're talking about the painting of the Last Supper of Jesus too. That really famous painting. It was in what is that? Dan Brown novel. I don't remember. Anyway, if you look at it, I'll pull it up and I'll put it down in here so you know. There's 3 sets of 4 apostles. There's 4 quadrants of the year. There's 12 signs of the zodiac. It's all old esoteric knowledge, hidden in Christianity, and that's one of the things that's important to remember, is that the Christian mysteries are very real and very profound, and they're worth looking into. This is where you start getting in, where we start leaving the exoteric Christian doctrine and start getting into more of the heavier stuff, the stuff that's like under the surface, that's hidden from view. All the same stuff that we talk about in here, with, even though I come through the heathen side of things, a lot of this stuff comes from the Christian side of things too. All the information is shared throughout all the mystery schools. Even though themes and cultures might change, the information is still there. So yes. So summer solstice is up here. This is where the sun is at the height of its power throughout the year. Winter solstice is where the sun is at the lowest point of the year. And the fall equinox is when the sun is dying. The spring equinox is when the sun is being born. Okay. So, the way that the story goes, spring equinox, Christ starts his ministry. The first thing we know, the first story that kicks off his ministry is the wedding feast of Cana. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the wedding feast of Cana it's not a wedding, let's say like my two friends are getting married. The wedding feast of Cana was a yearly festival that happened in Cana, celebrating the marriage of the sun, right here, to the earth, right here. The sun in the springtime brings to spring rains. So the sun at the wedding feast mates with his wife, the earth. His sacred fluid, the rain, fills the earth with water. And between the light of the sun and the sacred fluid, which is the rain, grapes begin to grow, and then the grapes are turned into wine. Wine was a big deal in Jesus' time. Water wasn't very good to drink, so watered down wine was what people did. It killed a lot of the bacteria and stuff in it. So Jesus, the Son, turning the water into wine was a big deal. It was the Son starting his mystery, bringing the spring rains, and bringing life into the world. Now, so as we progress through the year, however, we start getting to the height of his ministry up here. This is where the sun God, is at the height of its power, where you have more light than you have darkness. This is, and I forget which, I just lost it. It's the Capricorn, and what's the other one? You have Equator, then Capricorn, and then what's the other one? I don't remember. So it's more light than it is darkness. The summer is in full swing, and this usually happens between June 22nd and June 23rd. It depends on the year. So the sun is at the height of its power. He's at the strongest he's ever going to be. But he begins to wane, and after the summer solstice, he begins to travel back down. Now, when we get to in or around the fall equinox, there's something that really interesting happens. The sun enters the part of the sky known as the Southern Cross, and he will be there for approximately 3 months. Right, so this is a huge constellation. And when we say that the sun has entered that part of the sky, we're always referring to the constellation that is present as the sun is rising in the morning. So if you say that, say, someone is a Capricorn, for example, it means that the sun, at the time of your birth, the sun was rising in front of that constellation in the sky. That's really all it means. When we say this is the age of Aquarius or Capricorn or something like that, that means that the sun is rising in front of that constellation at the spring equinox over here. Anyway, so this here is the fall equinox. And so in and around this time, the sun will enter the part of the sky known as the Southern Cross. And at this time, it is said that the Son is hung on the cross and is now in the process of death. So now we have the Son who's dying. And then we come down here, and then we get to Samhain. Samhain is Halloween, and in and around Halloween, we have the last harvest festival. Halloween is the last harvest festival. The last of the food has been harvested, and now it is said that the Son has been pierced by a spear, because he's now in. See if I don't know if I can draw it very well. This is my little scorpion here. He's stung by the scorpion, because the Son now enters the. Of course, now I have Scorpio. It's like, Jesus, how could I completely forget that? Scorpio. So the Son is now been stabbed by the spear and is in rapid decline. And then the Son officially dies on December the 22nd or 23rd, which is winter solstice. And at that time, the Son is said to be put in the tomb. And he's in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, which conveniently wraps up at the December 25th, which is Christmas. And so what's interesting is that the ancients didn't have technology like we have, at least not that they're aware of. So they'll see the Sun die, and they'll watch the Sun, and they'll notice it's not visibly rising for 3 days. So they're sitting there crossing their fingers saying, please come back, please come back, please come back. And then after 3 days, the Sun begins to rise again in the horizon. The Horus zone. And that happens at December 25th, which is the festival of the rising of the sun, of the return of the light. So it's for this reason that we're pretty sure that this wasn't the literal birthday of Jesus. If Jesus was a real man, we know that December 25th isn't his actual birthday. But the story of Jesus has been is an allegory for the path of the sun as it progresses through the year. And maybe at some other time when we have a lot more time and space, we could go into that a lot more, and how if you track the story of Jesus, you're tracking the sun. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, for example, representing the four quadrants of the year. There's a lot in there. It's too much to go into right now, and I don't want to get too distracted. Anyway, so the sun is in the tomb for 3 days, and then on December 25th, the sun begins to climb in the sky again, and at that time it is said that the sun has been born. The Son of God, Balder, Christ, Tammuz, Mithra, whatever god you choose, Helios, is born at December 25th after the winter solstice. And so after his birth, he lives for 30 years, or 3 months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. He lives for 30 years, and then begins his ministry again right up here at the spring equinox the following year. See that? It's pretty cool stuff, huh? I think so. This is I love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff. So This story here is the exact mirror of a day. This is when we get into the old axiom, as above, so below. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, as above, so below does not mean bringing hell to earth, but is actually referring to patterns that repeat themselves in nature. So a day is like a year, and a year is like the great year, which is the 153,000 year. Don't quote me on that number because I always forget it. It's like 150 something thousand year progression of the equinoxes, and we can go into that in some other time too. But each one is like the other. A day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day, as the Bible says. But it's the same thing, right? So, like when we're talking about with the Norse, the Balder, the sun god, is beloved by everybody. He's everyone's favorite. He has long golden hair. He has blue eyes, similar to the way that Jesus is depicted a lot in religious art. There's a reason why he's always depicted as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person. It's not because he's not representing a literal. It's not representing a literal person, but is an analogy for the sun, right? Similarly, so with the long yellow hair, symbolizing summer. At the death of Jesus, his blonde hair is replaced by a crown of thorns, representing kind of the black sun as he goes into his death. So Balder is loved by everybody. He gets murdered by his uncle Loki. Loki tricks the blind god Hod into murdering Balder. Again, we have that imagery of blindness. Someone who doesn't understand. So almost always in the dying god myths, the god is murdered by ignorance. Always, without exception. Always murdered by ignorance. In Jesus' case, we have him flat out saying, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." They don't understand. And in Balder's case, he was murdered by the blind god, the god who can't see. Tricked. The blind god was tricked. And then Balder is having been murdered. He dies and then goes into the underworld, waiting for the end of Ragnarok. And after Ragnarok, he is born again up in here into the light. And then a new cycle begins. And so in the story of the sun, whether or not we're dealing with the cycle of a day or the cycle of a year or the cycle of the great year, we see the dying god myth played out in the sky in the way that it is portrayed. So these stories aren't just fanciful tales because they're a fun mythological story. They represent actual things that are happening in real life. They're analogies to something that's bigger than ourselves. The rule of thumb is, if you think you understand the gods, you don't understand the gods, because they're bigger than our minds could wrap their head up. They're bigger than our minds can grasp. And so in a lot of the ways that we use story, again, like I've always said, is the story is what is there to teach us the truth through the abstraction. If you take it in a literal way, you'll miss it. But if you understand the story is meant to be a... Sorry, I know I'm out of frame during this whole video. But if you understand that the story is meant to teach you something more, then you start getting a lot out of it. And you starting to see these parallels between the story of Jesus, story of Balder, Tammuz, Ishtar, you go on and on and on. Horus. You start to see that there's more there than just a simple story. And this is called astrotheology. Astrotheology. It's the way the sky creation tells the story of God. And so different gods take on different roles to play. Yeah. I don't think I have any more to add today. But this is a very large subject, and we will, of course, get into this a lot more as time goes on. But it's good to just kind of get that under your belt. There is a lot of really good material out there regarding astrotheology. If you're interested, Mark Passio, one of my heroes, who was one of the original inspirations into even doing this channel to begin with. He has a lot of great stuff on astrotheology. I'm forgetting the other guy's name. I can't remember his name. I'll post it in here somewhere. Let's see. What else? I think that's it. Thanks for listening. I won't be here next week because I am taking the boy camping. We're going to go look at the stars. I'm taking my buddy of mine, Mark. We're going to go up to my home country in Eastern Oregon. I grew up in a little 200-person town up there. And you've never seen stars until you've been out in the middle of nowhere. It's something else. There's nothing like it in the whole world. Up where it's pitch black and there's more stars than there is darkness. It's pretty special, and I'm really looking forward to showing my son that and my buddy Mark. I might be able to get in a video or two in between there, but we'll keep going. Of course, if you have any questions, please leave a comment. That would be great. If I have messed up on anything and you want to correct me, please leave a comment. If you want some more clarification, leave a comment. Or if you want to tell me how awesome and sexy my beard is, do that too. I don't know. Do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm easy. I do this because I love you. And I hope that you will... I almost had it. Oh, I lost it again. I almost had the guy's name. I don't know. I'm going to remember as soon as I hit that stop button. I will remember it, and I will be frustrated. So, all right. Bye.